Okay, I want to get cranking. I want to finish up. I started a series called Upside Down, and this is sort of like the closing of the Upside Down series. And I started a few weeks ago. It's been crazy. July, the theme was guest speaker month, I guess, because I had to go pick up the twins one Wednesday night, and I was still in Michigan the next Wednesday night, or actually on my way back down. And then I had high school camp, which was awesome. I was actually blessed to be able to do the Thursday morning session. And then Friday, when I got home from camp, I got to go do the speak at the Hispanic camp that Friday night, which was a blast. And then so now I'm back here. Yesterday, I spent the entire day dealing with my twins. We both had a temperature of close to 103, and my wife had a temperature of like right at 103. So I was like Mr. Mom, paramedic, poop diaper changer, which I enjoy doing. That's kind of weird, but I love them. I love those kids, and I'll change them all day long. Well, maybe not quite all day, but anyway. So it's been fun. So it's been kind of crazy for me last couple weeks, but I think everything's coming back to a close. So I'm pretty excited about that. I just want to go ahead and get straight into the Word, and then we'll do some worship, and we'll see what we have time-wise at the end, and we'll just go from there. All right, again, we talked about upside-down world, and we've talked about the idea of the kingdom of God, right? You know, God's kingdom. Do you think heaven looks like earth right now, the way things are going on? Do you think there's wars and rumors of wars in heaven right now? Do you think people are talking about people and backstabbing? No. You know, I don't see Apostle Paul like tripping John the Baptist, as he's walking down, like hitting him in the back of the head. You know what I'm saying? I don't see a whole lot of meanness going on in heaven. So we admit that the kingdom of God is not like the earth. God's way is the way that He intended for all this to happen. I feel like a boom. Does it sound weird? Let's try this. Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Well, he may not be able to hear me up there. I think they're trying to record, so I'll go ahead and do this. Guys, if you just kind of fix that a little bit, see what we got, and we'll crank it out. Anyway, so we got God's way, and we talked about how we have our own little kingdoms, like our iPod is a kingdom, right? We get to control what's on our iPod. We get to control what we watch on TV, right? Unless your parents have that like little hey, denied, which is not a bad thing, the blocking thing. And we get like our room. We get to pick what we wear for the most part. We have kingdoms, things that we control, right? Right? Yeah. So we got this kingdom that we can control. But here's the deal. Oftentimes we have God's kingdom and we've got our kingdoms. And do they line up? Do you think God would do things the way we do it? And so the conflict that we talked about a few weeks ago is that conflict between us trying to run our kingdom, but ultimately God having His way. You know that old saying where it says, like if you have two people ahead of something, two heads make a freak? You ever heard that statement before? Somebody with two heads is a freak, right? And so anytime you have something where you have two bosses side by side and nobody's really in charge, you normally get bad situations. And oftentimes we live our life like that. We say we want God to be over our life, but yet we don't give Him everything. That makes you a spiritual freak. That makes you're doing things and it's all clumsy and it's not the way God would do it. Now, we never do anything perfect, but whenever we give God everything, the more that we give Him, the better it is for us and the smoother we are in our walk with Him. So I just wanted you to know that. Tonight, I want to talk about giving God complete control. And I have a couple questions that I'll ask here in a minute. But have you ever, guys, and I talked about this at camp, so some of you guys are at camp can hear this, but it fits so well with this topic. Have any of you guys ever forgot where you are for like a split second? Like forgot where you were at? It's like wake up, but like in class, like I did this scenario at camp in class. I had a kid who just forgot where he was at, and I'm sitting there teaching. It's actually every school that I've ever taught at, but I even remember at Cedar Shoals High School just 2 years ago, there was a kid, and I'm teaching, and he forgot where he was at. Because while I was teaching, dude was digging up his nose with his finger. And I'm not talking about the little, I realize people are looking at me dig. It's the, I think I'm at home and nobody's around me, I'm digging for gold kind of dig. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, his finger went really far up his nose, and it was just, and he was looking at it, and he was, it was just like nobody was around. He forgot where he was at. Okay? And that was just is nasty. And then I talked about a slobber boy, which I'll never forget. Slobber boy is the funniest thing I've ever seen teaching. Slobber boy was a kid who could sleep with his head up. So he would just sit there, and I'd be teaching, and he would just, his eyes would close and his mouth would drop. Kind of is almost the same. It just went, and then when his mouth dropped, his lip would fill with slobber, and then it would start to drip, 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 drip. And then I remember at one point it made a solid stream from the bottom, and it was this far from his bottom lip to the desk. It made a solid stream from the bottom of his lip to the desk of one complete string of slobberness. And it amazed me that I stopped the class, got everybody around, and I started talking about cohesion and molecular bonding, and it was just awesome. And then all of a sudden it broke, and he woke up to people going, "Oh," because they were just disappointed that it broke. And so I was like, "Really?" And so he woke up, and then he had a big pile. It was awesome. So anyway, we forget sometimes where we're at. Has that ever happened to you guys? Have you ever like done something and realized, "Oh crap, I'm in public. I am in public. You know, I should not have done that." You know, you look around, it's like, I hope nobody saw that. And that's kind of the moments that we have when we're Christians. It's almost like we're living this life, and all of a sudden we just are like, "Dude, I'm a Christian. I should not have laughed at that. I shouldn't have said that." You know what I'm saying? We do that so often in our Christian walk. And so that's what we're talking about. When we have God's kingdom in our life, we tend to not do that as much. And here's the deal. Oftentimes, our world becomes only about us. You know, oftentimes, we'll forget about who we are and where we're at. That's when the world becomes about us. Like that kid picking his nose wasn't concerned about the greater masses around him being grossed out. He had something in his nose. Those things don't pay rent. He had to get it out. So he dug it out. It was all about him. It was all about him at that point. Okay? And so oftentimes, even in our walk, sometimes we think it's just about us and God. You're like, wait a second, it is supposed to be about us and God. Okay, I hate to burst your bubble on this one, but listen, it's not about you and God. It's about God and you, God and your neighbor, God and that kid across the room that nobody likes. It's about God and your teacher. It's about God and every individual on this earth. Okay? So why do you live a Christian life? Not so that you can make it to heaven, because that's too shallow. God's plan is much bigger than just you and him. God's plan was God and me and God and you and God and you and God and you and God and you and God and everybody. That's what it's all about. And here's where we're at. So I want you guys to understand that God's plan is much larger than us. You know, I've got this little ball here. Yes. Dude, Wendy's is awesome. I think we're going to do these Minute to Win It games here because Wendy's rocks. I take the twins there all the time. Okay? Like, here's the deal. Here's our little world, okay? And we think everything that's inside of this is our room, our family, our dinner time, where we go eat, where we sleep, our friends, our interests, okay? And even our relationship with God. And this right here represents everybody's personal relationship. And it can be great. I'm saying you could have an awesome relationship. But see, God's interest is not just here. Our interest sometimes remains here. His interest is all around this whole room and beyond this room and out further. And see, you got to understand that God is not about this. He's about the entire planet. So I want you guys to understand that God sometimes looks down at us. And I wonder if he does. You know, when we sit there and it's like, oh, God, just Lord God, touch me, help me do good on my test. Lord God, help me to be better with you. Help me, my. Sometimes I think God looks down and is like, really? You know, there's other people out there. You pray about you so much, but have you ever fallen on your face and cried out for the lost friend at your school? Because really, I can only pour into you so much, okay, and your world's going to be saturated. But just like a sponge, you can get more of me if you just squeeze some of me out. Under your friends, that means doing things at school that you know, for other people, reaching out to other people. And so when we get so into our own world, sometimes we forget that God's not about just us. He's about the entire school. He's about the entire world. We don't think big enough as Christians. And if you keep a small mentality, you will have a small Christian life. You know, I've learned a long time ago not to sweat stuff because God is bigger than me. You know, and I'll even use, what's an example that happened today? It's actually a couple things that happened today. One of the things was Peter called me and said he could not come and do worship tonight. Hated it because this was his job. You know, his job, he had a meeting and he had to do work. Now, I had two options. I could have had a small inward Christianity thinking, or I could remember God is not about me and him. God's about the whole world. Do you think God knew that Peter was going to have a meeting at work that was going to keep him over, and he would have had to have stayed? Didn't have a choice. I mean, that's his bread and butter. When I taught high school, love you guys, but I had to do high school work stuff because that was where I made my money when I did ministry part-time. But now that I do ministry part-time, I'm not going to go to, I'm not going to go teach a tutoring class if it's going to put what I do here at risk, because this is where my focus is. And so, you know what I said when he said that? It was no problem. Because I learned a long time ago, God is more than just me and him. God is everything. Do you think God knew that Peter was going to have a meeting tonight? Do you think he knew what his boss was going to say? So as soon as he told me that, I was like, dude, you're not taking God by surprise. It'll work out. And you know what? It worked out. Nolan was here. He said, I'll do worship. Dave, do you know some songs? Yeah. How many of y'all thought tonight went okay? Yeah, I thought it did great. They did an awesome job. And that's what I'm saying. Things just work out. And I've noticed that if we live, y'all look at me. Here's the deal. You will live a life full of peace if you can understand that God's kingdom is bigger than you. How many of you just get ticked off when things don't go your way or somebody tells you something? Stop it. You're living in a small little bubble. God has got a bigger plan in store for you. God has got a bigger plan in store for you. I promise you. And I find out, here's another example. Middle school is at the camp this week. So a lot of them are there at the camp. Took 2 van loads full of kids to the camp this week. All right? I showed up here Monday morning not having a driver, not even knowing if I needed a driver, because the lady at the camp got so busy, she forgot to email me the list of the Cornerstone kids, because you can register online. Well, if you register online, how do I know you're going? Unless you come up to me and say, hey, I'm going to camp. Can you give me a ride? That never happened, because I just normally call her. She gives me a list of everything she has registered, and then I'm good to go. So I could have called her, and I could have said, listen, I don't know what kind of thing or camp you're running up there, but you can't run it this way, because it's about me right now. It's about me. It's not about the 650 kids that you have to put in a camp that holds 550. I don't care about that. I care about me and driving this other van. So you better get off your duff. I could have just wore into her. Then I realized it's not about me and just God. It's about God and everyone. He knows that she's trying her best. God also knows that I need another van driver. So I was like, I'm not sweating it. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't, I just said, God, I did my part. I called some people, thought I might have some backup, but that fell through. And I thought, you know what? God is bigger than this situation, because I don't serve God. I serve a God that knows everybody's situation. So I said, God, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll have enough drivers there. Steve Kimball shows up. Hey, I'm off today. Do you need anything? Absolutely. Actually, I went up to him and I said, Steve, what are you doing today? He said, I'm off today, man. I've got time to kill. What do you need? It's like, could you drive some kids to the church? He said, absolutely. Now, what if I called that lady, chewed her out for not having her act together? What if I got upset, got up that morning, and my wife and my kids wanted to play and talk, and I was just so stressed out over not knowing if I had a driver? You think God would look down and say, hey, wow, he trusts me? No. I'm telling you guys, let's live a life where we don't wig out. Let's live in God's kingdom and not ours. Life is so much more peaceful. Even situations when they seem to be beyond what you can control, if you live in peace, you know you're giving God praise. If you live in peace, you're giving God praise. I'll never forget how God's directed my steps. Coming here even before stepping into the teaching profession. Y'all know that I have a pre-med degree.